What's going on, beautiful people? So we have already set up the 3 tanks now. Previously we built everything, put the tanks on, and then we laid in a full nutrient system. In the last video, we set the hardscape, did the initial planting and filled the tanks up. And as you can see, they don't look great. But what you're seeing here, this is completely normal. Now, I didn't put the filters on, and quite often when I set up a new tank that I know's got new bogwood in, this has got the newest bogwood in, I just fill it up and leave it for a couple of days. This has been a couple of days, a load of tannins leaching into the water, completely normal, and now I'll just whip it down and put it back up again. Most of it will be removed, but when we start the filters, I'll put in some like organic eating compound, and that should swallow up all of those tannins as well. There we go, that's all filters running, and we got some decent flow pushing everything around. With all my tanks, I never like to have too high flow unless you've got something like cichlids, where you need the bottom being sort of stirred up so the grime don't sit there. But yeah, for a planted tank, this is plenty. So the outlet on this one is over this side, and you can see even all the way down here, the lilies are being moved, which is enough. You don't want them being blasted around, but just gentle waving like that means any detritus or anything that sits on that substrate is gonna get pushed up into the water column and then taken out by the filter. Now the water should stay nice and clean, and that means we can now move on to the next part of planting, because we are nowhere near done. I mean, this one isn't gonna have a huge amount more, is it? There's tons in there, but the rest we need more stems just to give a color gradient that goes through the whole scape. And it just so happens that I have got a ton of stems available. So this is my 8 foot, obviously, and I've just done some final shots of it. I've basically put together a whole compilation of the build from start to finish with all the final shots as well. Now, I deliberately let all the stems grow right to the surface for those shots, but they do need trimming back now, and I could replant them, but there's already enough. So I'm gonna trim them. They'll double up from the trim points, but it also means I get to move across a load of these awesome stems into the new aquarium. Now it's quite higgledy-piggledy in this one, and that was kind of the idea. But in the other one, I want to keep to sort of color zones as best as I can. So I want this tank to be more sort of orangey tones, moving sort of across into the greens, with the odd little bit of detail as well, and some darker green tones obviously, but you've got that hydrocotyl tripatia there, which is just going to go everywhere eventually. So I don't think we need much more in that section, maybe a little bit of stemmage in that area. And then coming across to this side, when I built it, I deliberately left this huge negative space at the back, all reds. This will merge out as the red tank, so you've got red, green, and sort of orange. But the first job is going to be just to start collecting those stems. So here are all the stems that I've collected up. The next job is to divide them into color, size, and type as well. So we should get quite a few piles going on. I just find it's best to do this, otherwise it just can kind of look a mess if you just plonk it all in as it is. And it gives the shorter ones more chance of growing because they receive more light if they're put sort of to the foreground as well. There we go, so we've got lots of nice little piles there, the reddest at this end, and then it goes to more sort of greens over this side. Now, when I plant stems like this that have been trimmed, I don't just stick them into the substrate, because when there's a mass like that going in, it tends to just work its way up in the flow. So I attach weights all to the bottom of the stems right down there, just a little bit showing, and then I can just plonk them wherever I want, and they're just gonna stay. They'll still keep growing, they'll keep propagating as well, so it's all good. It's exactly what I did in the tank behind as well. You saw how good that looked. There we go, I did a couple. I was gonna keep going, but then I remembered I've got a lot of deep substrate in these tanks. Yeah, the planting areas I'm going for in that back section there is very deep, so I should be able to push them down with the tweezers, which is the better way, let's be honest. Planting a couple individually, or in pairs, is a lot better than just a big clump in one section. It looks a lot more natural. And again, this side, look, you can just see how deep that is. So there's no problem, it won't be able to come up, because if I just put it down to about here, it's not possible for it to come up. There's too much sort of suction and grip on it. Whoa, I mean, I've misted the water up a little bit, but that looks so cool, didn't it? Like I say, more sort of orangey tones, the odd red in there as well. It's very hard to sort of distinguish between the two. And then on this side here, I'm gonna put some of the green Rotala rotundifolia, and again on this side at the back and in this little pocket, and that'll hopefully merge the two tanks a little bit better than just, you know, full on orange and red in that corner and just pure green here. Because the green Rotala rotundifolia still has like a pinky hue on the underside of the leaves, so you don't see it all the time, but yeah, it's just what happens in high lighting. There we go. I think that merges the two really nicely. You know, it's just subtle, but it's the subtleties that in this kind of scaping that's going to make the difference, I think, between it being an awesome layout and just something like usual, you know? And for our next trick, we transform this tank into a red beauty. And there we go, looking mighty fine, but I've just remembered I've got a ton more reds that I can add as well. Yeah, I completely forgot. The reason I've let this all grow so much is because I'm going to be trimming and using these. Now, some of the leaves have gone a little bit sort of more greeny, and that's because I left way too many of the red root floaters at the top and it blocked out a lot of light. So since I've removed it though, you can see the tips are going back red again. So over in the other light, they should go nice and red as well. I'm gonna take a nice good harvest of this lot. Whew, that was a lot of prep work, but it's well worth it. So what I do is I grab about 5 stems, pinch them together at the end so they stay like that. And then what it means is when I now come to just plant them, I've just got to grab them really quick, in they go. They don't dry out. It should look pretty amazing. We're looking great, but I'm loving this myophyllum, I'll put a label up, I can't pronounce it, but I'm loving the orangeness of it, and it's actually pretty much doubled in size now since I put that in there. It's a very fast growing plant. Just so you know, the planting of this has actually happened over the course of about 3 or 4 days. I didn't want to rush this project, so yeah, I've taken my time with it. And again, in the same time, it's grown loads over in this tank as well. So I'm going to trim these stems, transfer them over now that I know it's growing well in both, and then we'll have like quadruple the plants within like a few weeks. Now, as you can see, the taller ones are starting to get into the flow a little bit. I'll let them grow a little bit longer and I'll snip those as well and bring them back down. And every snip point, we get 2 more nose grow out. Now, this plant is actually a very rare plant. I don't even know if you can buy it in the UK, but it was given to me by Ty Streetman, so it is my duty to propagate it. And it is now time to start filling up this top area with the plants. Now, some of my favorites are peace lilies, monstera, devil's ivy, I think it's called. Is it? Not, or pothos? I think that's the same thing anyway. I've used these routinely a lot of times and I know they do really well, particularly in my water. I don't know if it matters the water parameters, but I've always got them to grow great. So yeah, my shell tank here has got a really nice peace lily and also this other tree thing. I don't know what it is. I should have looked at the label, but it's just got its roots down under there in the water and that grows really great. It's like tripled in size since I got it. So this one is the pothos and variegated pothos. And then this, what was this one? I think this is also a monstera, but it's like just a flat leaf. I could be wrong though there. It was ages ago I put all this in. It's looking so good though. Over here in the Amazon puffer tank, in the top section, we've got even more pothos that is growing insane. And above the red devil angelfish tank, look at that lot. More Monstera. It was like nowhere near this big and thick when I first put it on, but it's just going insane now. New leaves popping up all the time as well. And also above the archerfish tank, more peace lilies, and there's some palms in here as well. Again, growing great. That's a newish leaf. There's new leaves sprouting up all the time, so I know these plants work really well. But one that I'm really interested in, this peace lily here, which is absolutely huge, I've had now for quite a long time. I sort of just put it in the corner of this tank just to, keep it going, so I had a water source. But I think that one will be a really good one, if not half of it at least, to use all in this top section. I just want it looking like a jungle that's like, or more like a tree that's sort of merged up the wall. You know what, actually scratch that. Like, I love the plants where they are already, they're doing well. And rather than me just taking them out and putting them there, let's redo some new ones, sort of start afresh. So then we've got even more growing, and I can show you the process. It's quite simple, but some important steps to take. Right, something interesting has happened. Now, after I made that little clip of me going to get all the plants, I brought them back to the studio here, and that's literally all I had time for. I've been away for a week, and there's been some changes on the tanks. Now, obviously, these are new setups, and therefore, they are not settled at all. So as you can see, in the last week of me not being here, we've got algae on the sidewall. There's sort of some algae collecting all on the rocks, anything that's hitting a highlight surface. You can say though is that the stems have grown in absolutely massive. Look at that, looks insane. They're all coated in like a sort of stringy algae. The middle one, not as bad, but yeah, there's still string algae you can sort of see floating about everywhere. And diatoms hitting the bottom, again, that's all to be expected anyway. The end tank though, looking pretty spot on. I mean, all of the stems have got new shoots on them, which means that they're growing in nicely. A little bit of algae on the side, but not too much actually. It's very interesting. Same equipment, pretty much the same setup, but not as much algae. Now, of course, I could just clean all this up quickly and probably you wouldn't notice, but who's gonna learn anything if I do that? I just wanna show you that I don't get perfect setups. Every other tank in the studio though, after the week is looking perfect apart from these ones because they're fully settled in. They've got fish and snails and things like that in the tank that will keep on top of that algae. Now, how do we combat something like this? Well, the first thing we need to do is get our hands in there and just remove as much of it by hand as we can, which is a pain, let's be honest. But if you do that, you minimize the time that it takes for any sort of cleaner fish or cleanup crew to sort out any other problems. And also, I think it's worth pointing out that if I was here, I would have spotted this earlier. How would I spot it? Well, there would be little signs. A little bit of diatoms coming on, a little bit of string algae. Now, the diatoms I would have been fine with. That just happens. It's absolutely fine, but it's usually a sign for me that I need to start adding some kind of cleanup crew. Now, I'm not here. Kate doesn't know that. She's been looking after the place for me whilst I've been gone. She did say, looking very green. I was like, oh, good. She went, no, not like good green, algae green. So yeah, it's just new setup. My eyes aren't on it. So normally I nip any problems in the bud as soon as I see them. But in this case, we're gonna have to clean up afterwards, which is not a problem. I've had to do this before several times as well. And if I'm honest, it's not that much to do with me now. It's more about what I choose to put in the tanks to combat the problem. So for this tank, first thing I'm gonna use is my toilet cleaner and just get in there, stir it all up. Most of the algae, if it's on look at that, spin it round, it's all coming off. I'm just trying to get it into the water column at the moment because we'll do a water change in a second. Any sort of dead leaves, look at those ones. They didn't convert to underwater or they didn't like being moved, from Ty's tanks. Sometimes they can do that. Get on it. All of it's quite loose, look. It's coming off so easy, which is a good sign. It means that we'll be able to fix this up nice and quickly. There's lots of gunk on the wood as well. Again, getting that in the water column. And in a minute when I do a water change, I'll keep wafting this all around as well, so it's all going to come out with that water change. And then get the old razor scraper on the side. Again, it's just, oh, I just scratched it a little bit, don't do that. Make sure you're moving quite fast because you want to be wafting everything about. That is the point of this, really, just agitation. Not just agitation that your tank has turned horrible. This can be the point where I see people get really annoyed and they're like, oh, for crying out loud, I give up, this is too hard. But this is actually a normal part. And even if I did nothing, it would probably fix itself in time. But we can speed up the process massively by actually, you know, putting some effort in. There we go, look, stir up some of that gravel, wafting in and amongst everything. So yeah, now I'm just gonna whip that down and whip it back up again. Well, I'll do the same thing on all the tanks and then we should be looking a little bit better. There we go, look, everything looking miles better. I mean, these two at the end weren't too bad anyway. This one was an absolute mess, wasn't it? And I've trimmed back the myofilum and replanted it, which is growing. So it's probably the fastest growing plant I've ever seen. There's still a little bit of sort of string algae dotted around on everything, but we'll leave that because the Ottos that I want to put in now, they will get that fixed for us in like a couple of days, even overnight sometimes. So this is my fish wall. Many of you have seen it. It's where I keep fish that I'm going to be putting in tanks or swapping around and that sort of thing. And in this, oh, hello Timmy. I'm sure everyone will want to say hello. My wife's here, so he's excited because she feeds him so much. But yeah, this tank here is where I keep Ottos at the moment. I've got about 12, something like that in there. You can see I keep a nice sort of coating on the edges of the glass as well. I don't clean this tank at all, like scrape the glass I mean by cleaning. And that just leaves like a constant sort of buffet for them. But yeah, we're gonna put about 5 in each of the tanks. And that should keep them absolutely brilliant. Here we go then. So just 5 is enough because after they've cleaned the whole tank, 5 for this size tank will be perfect to combat any future algae that's growing. If you put too many in, after they've cleared it all, they'll run out of a food source unless you're continuously feeding. So yeah, go with 5. This guy's fine. He's hiding. There we go. And believe it or not, they're actually a schooling fish as well. So 5 is a good little number for them to feel comfortable. I mean, they've all just gone their own separate ways, but you know, you quite often see them in little groups, socialising together. I don't know what I mean by socialising. They're not like getting a beer or anything. And then 5 more for this tank as well. And 5 for the end tank as well. Right, finally we can get on with what I was actually doing, which was filling up the top area of plants. I want them everywhere. So let's prepare those peace lilies that I bought previously. So here they are down here. Kate's been keeping them alive nicely for me. Need to take them out now and wash all the soil off. Okay, first job, get these bad boys out. And for that, some scissors are gonna come in handy. Look at these beautiful plants. I was gonna say flowers, and I suppose they are beautiful flowers as well. Tell you what, we've got a really nice pair here. Sometimes when I go to the shop, they've got them, but they're like small, but these are a really good size. Look at that, smooth. So what you need is a bucket of water, and then you take the whole plant out of the pot. Look at that root system, we want all of that. And just put it straight in, and then we can wash off, or break off, sorry, large chunks of the soil quite easily. Eventually this will split into about 5 plants probably, and then to get the final bit off, I'll take it outside and spray it. So there we go, look, there's one done. Now, as you can see, like that's a plant, that's a plant, that's a plant. They're all sort of entwined into one, but I'm thinking it looks too good and beautiful to break apart. So I'm gonna stick with this one as a whole. I'll probably stick with both if I'm honest. They look great. I've got other plants to put around them as well. Okay, so I'm taking the whole plant. Now, you can trim some roots off if you want, but I find that the more you can leave, the better it adapts to being in water. If you've got the space, there's a space there if I can feed it in, which I think I can. Oh yes, I can. Pull that down. And the roots are also going to help sort of set it in place as well. Now you can make sure that the actual base of the plant is fully submerged as well, because it's completely fine being underwater. I've got many of them now that grow great like that. I actually find it does a bit better if you put more in the water. Okay, there we go, look at that. Looks awesome. Now any leaves that look a bit silly coming forward, you can trim off, but I don't bother. I like to just leave them. Look at that, just like that, we've transformed that top section. And I think it'd be too big to put one more like huge plant, so I'm gonna try and break up the other one into some smaller pieces. One that goes there will look really good, and then maybe one over this side. So I try and break it in two, and then intertwine it with some like pothos or something like that. And then I've collected up some pothos as well. This is just one example. I've got other stuff just dotted around everywhere, to be honest. There's loads of it. So I've left the long roots in so they can still get into the water, and then they'll just continue to grow. Now that is looking so good, so sweet. Sorry. Yeah, everything's good. It's looking great. There's a couple more additions I want to add though. Obviously we've got those auto sink lists that are going to do a job of cleaning everything in there. I want to add two more things that's going to help with algae management plus interest to the tank. The first one is these bad boys you can see here, which is water lettuce, mini water lettuce that goes into mega water lettuce if you leave it. But yeah, these are really good because they're so easy just to scoop out and easy to manage, whereas like duckweed just goes crazy. And the other thing is snails. Just fed this tank, so there's a ton of snails at the bottom we can grab out and distribute them in each of the new tanks. Couple in there, couple in there, and a couple in there. And yeah, water lettuce, remember, it propagates very fast. So like within a week, most of the surface will be covered anyway. And there we go, look, I've collected up a load of those ram's horns, gonna spread them about. There's a little bit of food in there with them as well, but that'll be fine. There we go, look, snails instantly at home, a little bit of food, extra food as well. The ottos will enjoy that. Like I say, they always seem to like to hang around in little groups of threes. I don't know what that is. Right, the tanks are perfect, they're set. Now, I've got to go away for another week on work again, but I'm expecting this to come back, be grown in a bit more, looking pretty much spot on, fingers crossed. And when I come back, we can then start adding fish to each one of the tanks. I'm really looking forward to seeing some feature fish in here. I've got them on the back wall already, so I kind of know what I want to do in each one, but you know, I might change my mind in the next week or over the next week, and on the way back, get some different ones or more. So yeah, I'm always sort of thinking what will go well together. Beauty of having these three tanks is that we can do completely different setups in each one. I'm sort of thinking like a barb, like a gourami, and then I'm not even sure yet. But yeah, hopefully you've enjoyed this one. Hopefully you're looking forward to the next one, and I will see you very shortly.